Can you give me some sense of what the public mood is in Wales? You know, given that the people there are living through far more draconian restrictions than in England, has that generated much in the way of resentment, perhaps?
Well, there's an understanding that the new variant is far more transmittable. I mean, I myself could reel off 10 names of individuals who've gone down with COVID in the last week or so, whereas in the first wave, it was harder than watching it on TV to see the case numbers going up. And even the second wave, it was very hard to come across people. This variant this time round does seem to be affecting all parts of Wales and indeed the rest of the United Kingdom. But thankfully, because of the various measures that have been put in place over the last 12, 18 months, we do know that the hospitalisation rates are nowhere near as great. Thankfully, the serious illness levels are far lower as well. And so that's why I go back to my point about strong public health messaging, individuals taking responsibility, and we as a society starting to learn to live with COVID, because you know, it's Omicron this new year. It'll in 6 to 12 months' time be another variant coming, because that's the way viruses mutate. And the other thing we've got to ask ourselves, will it be in another 6 months, 12 months, or even 4 months that we have to have another booster rollout campaign to create a fourth cycle of vaccination doses going in, and the drain that places on the NHS, because obviously that has a huge change of resources from doing what the NHS does on a day-to-day basis of elective surgery and dealing with other public health measures, to divert resources into obviously another booster campaign, and that will do nothing to help get people off waiting lists.
But this is the key point, isn't it? That you say that the virus is far more transmissible, which we all know. And yet you have Drakeford sort of making statements such as he thinks Omicron is just as dangerous as the other variants, which was factually incorrect. And really, it is surely at this point about personal responsibility. You know, it isn't about how many people are going to get this. The point is how many hospitalisations and deaths it causes, which is a very different thing. So do you understand why young people would want to take matters into their own hands, to cross the border, to have the parties that they can have, given that they are at very little risk from this virus?
Well, as I said, I've always been someone who's promoted personal responsibility and also the strong public health messaging over restrictions, because ultimately what will win through the day is individuals actually taking responsibility for their actions, and government obviously working to create a sustainable platform of public health measures that aren't restrictions on people's liberties and aren't restrictions on the economy. Because we can't go on with spiralling waiting lists, with school closures. In Wales, we know that the first 2 days of the spring term have been diverted into teacher training times rather than pupils going back to schools, and there will be a significant number of schools that will be online teaching rather than in-person teaching, because obviously there are such high absence rates, because teachers, like everyone else in society, is susceptible to the Omicron variant. But it is a fact that we've got to make sure as a society going forward into 2022, we can become more resilient, we can learn to live with COVID, and we can ultimately regain what we hold precious in our lives to make sure that as a society we continue to function.